Hello and welcome to this latest video from DPP Planning. With COP26 on the horizon, sustainability and the journey to net zero are, quite rightly, front and centre in politics, business and society. Every part of the economy has a role to play in working towards net zero, including, of course, the planning sector. Joining me today is DPP Associate Director Oshan Roberts to discuss how planners are contributing to reducing carbon emissions and a greener future for us all. Oshan, hello.
Hello there.
Hi, so as I was saying, we talk about engineers, scientists, politicians, they're all tackling climate change. But as I said in my intro, all areas of the economy have to contribute. So what part do planners play?
As you say, yeah, everyone does have a role to play in achieving net zero, and planning, I suppose, is one of the cogs in the whole process of achieving that through liaising with the developers, through liaising with the local planning authority, and advising the developers and our clients on how they can achieve those targets and what those targets are for a specific council. So it's all this collaborative approach, and it's informing the clients as to how they can achieve it for their particular development in that particular location.
Okay, so are there any guidelines that you have to follow as planners to ensure that developments are as green as possible? Obviously, we've heard things like the government's new net zero plan that came out recently, which included the heat and building strategy. So what sort of things do you have to look out for and do you advise clients on?
So one of the first questions that developers ask us is, what are the energy requirements of that particular council? So we'll advise them on what that council's policy is in terms of their requirements for BREEAM or for net zero or for energy reduction targets. And we'll lead them through that process of talking to the engineers and advising them on how they can achieve that. But every council will have their own local requirements. That will be in part informed by the climate emergency that council might have announced, and also as well, obviously, by the government's recent net zero announcement this week as well. So, the policies may well need to catch up a little bit with the UK government's recent announcement, but essentially, those, from a planning perspective, those are embedded in local planning policy.
Obviously, DPP works across lots of different sectors as urban planners, but there'll be some themes and some sort of key low carbon issues that they all share. What are some of those issues that your clients face?
Some of the issues that they face are around provision of EV charging points. Councils might require a certain level of those, and it's all about providing the appropriate number and the infrastructure. The costs of that, particularly for maybe private developers, can be high because ultra vehicle charging points are still fairly expensive to install. And therefore you come down to concerns around viability. And that's maybe less of an issue we see with sort of more the public elements, sort of developments like schools and public buildings and developments like that. But certainly from a private perspective, that's viability in delivering these features or carbon saving elements to this in the schemes is a key consideration for them.
Because obviously, there's obviously more than just things like EV charging and stuff. There's obviously how these houses are powered and or whether it's a mixed-use development. Maybe that's it from a sort of high-rise or a block of apartments. They face different challenges. What other things are there that have to be considered to help a development to become low carbon or even net zero?
Yeah, so I think the installation on any new building is key. That accounts for existing housing stock as well. It's all about insulating the building to try and reduce energy consumption, and that will then reduce the pressures on the grid and the need for energy, so, and heating and power for the building. So it's all that, it's that adage of insulation, and that is the key element in our clients being able to deliver their net zero or passive house aspirations.
Okay. So there's lots of talk about future targets, the journey to net zero, but this is very much an issue of the here and now. Tell us about some of the projects that you've been working on that help, drive sustainability, zero carbon type developments.
Yeah. So over probably the last 12 months, we've heard so much more about net zero, about development, about how the housing stock needs to change to deliver on net zero and things. But we've been working on projects for over 2 years, starting on that road to delivering these projects. And one of the first that we've worked on was Park Hadau, which is a development in South Wales consisting of about 35 dwellings, which are, each dwelling is like a power station, I suppose. It creates power, it stores power, and it puts the power back into the grid as well if there's excess energy there. And that power is being stored in batteries within the buildings. And as far as we know, back when we got the planning permission, that was one of the first net zero in operation schemes in the UK. And we think wider than that in the world, but certainly in the UK, that was one of the first. And that has really sort of moved forward. And we are now seeing, we've done 2 schools that are net zero as part of the government's rebuilding programme. And the Education Secretary, Nadeem Zawawi, broke ground on one of our sites back in September, in West Coventry Academy. That was our first net zero school. And we've done a couple of those since then. We've also been involved with some passive house and net zero community schemes. So one of those was in Leeds for the University of Leeds. That scheme was a community football hub that was partly funded by the Premier League and the FA, whilst being in net zero or passive house wasn't a key element in getting planning permission. It certainly was a factor in it. And that element is becoming more on the forefront of local planning authorities' minds in terms of how they bring together the planning balance in making a decision on the planning application. So yeah, we are seeing a number of schemes coming forward. We've got an 80 house scheme in planning at the moment, along with 41,000 square meters of research R&D office space, which those are all excellent schemes, and we are going to see more of them.
That sounds really interesting. So there's lots of really good stuff going on. But as I said at the start, obviously COP26 is coming up very soon, and while we all can't attend the event, it will impact on all our lives. What's your view on how important it is in achieving a low carbon economy?
I think it's incredibly important. I've been on a few conferences of late, and it's at the forefront of everybody's minds. We're talking about if it's energy, renewable energy schemes. 10, 15 years ago, a wind farm would get hundreds of complaints or objections, but we are seeing comments back from those developers saying, yeah, people understand that now we need this infrastructure to be delivered, and they are seeing less objection to it because they understand why it's needed. And so this COP26 being in Glasgow will really bring that to the forefront of people's minds, will make people think about how they use their car, how much they use their car, whether they can take a journey in a different way, or how they heat their home. And the government's grants this week are on provide in terms of heat pumps for homeowners. It's all beginning to snowball now, and hopefully over the next year, after COP26, we'll see a real progress towards achieving net zero together as a country.
Thanks, Oshan. And if you want to find out any more about some of the schemes that Oshan was talking about, visit the DPP website and look out for more videos coming soon.